just get on board. All you need is faith to hear the diesel humming. Don't need no ticket, you just thank the Lord. People get ready. People get ready. People get ready for the train to Jordan, picking up passengers from coast to coast. Faith is the key. Open the door and board her, 'cause there's hope for all among his love and more. People, please get ready for the train of love. It doesn't cost you anything. All you do is get on board. The only giving is giving yourself. This is the last go round. And if you missed this train, I want you to know you've only got yourself to blame. Me and old Sonny are taking the same ride. And the door is open wide for you, for you. There ain't no room for the hopeless sinner who would hurt all mankind just to save his own. Have pity on those whose chances go slimmer. For there's no hiding place. There's no hiding place. There's no hiding place. There's no hiding place. From his loving throne. From his loving throne. People get ready. For the train to Jordan. It's picking up passengers, yeah. From coast to coast. Faith is the key. Open the door and board her, Lord. 'Cause there's faith for all among his love.
Good morning. Is this working? Yes. Good morning. Perhaps you people who are looking at my back might want to kind of make yourself round to over there a little bit. Yeah, I think so. Yeah. Okay. Good morning and welcome to you all. Nick will be delighted that you are able to be here and that so many of you are in colourful clothes. My name is Rosie Kaplan, and it is my privilege to be officiating at this ceremony of farewell to honour the life of Nicholas Konstantin BAROVSKY, known to you all as Nick. No matter where we are in the world, a funeral service allows us to express our love, appreciation, and grief when we lose someone we love. And this service is brought together as a final act of acknowledgement, us, Nick's loved ones and friends. You are invited to join together again at 2 p.m. this afternoon at the Lismore Bowling Club for a celebration of Nick's life. There will be music and a slideshow of pictures from his life, and an opportunity to share your memories and stories with each other. But before we get to the celebration, we have to acknowledge our grief and name that for so many of us, Nick's death came as a terrible shock and surprise. This is because Nick chose to keep his illness to himself. He only allowed a very, very small group of people to be privy to this. He needed his privacy to come to terms with what was happening to him. He wanted to be remembered as a healthy and happy man. We may find it hard to accept his choice. We may wish we'd had our chance to help or to actually say our farewells. But this was not to be. This was the way Nick wanted it. So this now, here, is our opportunity to start coming to terms with Nick no longer being in our lives. Let us embrace what Nick wanted for Nick's sake. This sudden loss will affect us all in different ways. Our grief is a personal experience. Each of us will grieve differently, and grief can bring up many feelings. I invite you to take the time to adapt to each feeling rather than trying to control it. Through acceptance, we can allow ourselves to fully experience emotions without judging whether we should be feeling the way we do. And there are so many ways that grief can manifest. For some of us, our love for Nick may be showing up as confusion. For some, anger. For others, tears. Grief may appear as many different emotions, but remember, grief cannot exist except where there has been love. And if those of you who have got seats to sit on would like to take your seats, please do. Today is about comforting one another as we come to terms with our loss and to farewell Nick by surrounding him with our love and our tenderness. Nick's death will leave a huge gap as he has added his own unique sound to the rich symphony of life. His presence amongst us will be sadly missed, but he will live on in the memories we hold, in the love we share, and in the stories we will continue to tell of him. Hidden in all the pain and sorrow that we feel, there is undeniably something to celebrate. We can celebrate the fact that we have known Nick. We can celebrate that we were privileged and honored to have had him with all his great qualities in our lives. I didn't know Nick, but meeting with Natsky the other day, I learned about a generous, loyal man. I was told about Chairman Chow and Mr. Havachat. I learned he was a big storyteller who loved a bad dad joke. When his home and shop were flooded, many came to help him. There are people here today who have been friends with Nick since his school days. And of course, music, music, music. This poem by Tree Cards is a simple little verse, but it says it all. Music brings joy to all of our hearts. It's one of those emotional arts. Sounds of melodies that we truly adore bring us pure pleasure as our spirits do soar. Music that touches us, we cannot help but smile. We're free to choose genre or style. Music clearly enlightens our days, makes us happy in so many ways. And at Nick's request, Jimmy Willing is now going to read the eulogy. We might have to place the microphone for you.
Okay, I've got two of them, and I'm not very well rehearsed due to the lag that we have on the Northern Rivers with internet and stuff. So, but I'm just going to do my best. And And this is from John, Evelyn, Isabel and James Hall in the United Kingdom. Bit closer? I think you can hear me anyway, can't you? I've got a pretty big voice. Nick BAROVSKY was the finest friend one could imagine. It was my profound privilege to know him for 40 years. Like all who came into his orbit, I miss him with all my heart. I first met him at his Riverina Hi-Fi on Sydney's northern beaches. The shop was a shrine to high-end audio, and especially to the then apogee of analogue reproduction, Linn turntables and name amplifiers. I came to understand that Nick was something of a phenomenon, possessed of a unique insight into the secrets of analogue. His enthusiasm was infectious, a visit to his shop a grand occasion. The nature of Nick was warm and trusting. My father, Jim, a fellow audiophile, recounted a visit to Nick in the 1980s. Nick asked him if he wouldn't mind looking after the shop for a couple of hours. Nick had an errand to run. Of course, Dad was happy to help out. Just imagine the level of trust embodied in that relationship. Nick's hi-fi affliction was mostly driven by his love of music, pretty much all of it, from Mozart to Pink Floyd. His knowledge of music history was astonishing, and it led to a series of wonderful broadcasts on ABC radio. His program was very popular, with his lovely, mellifluous voice and his encyclopedic repertoire of music anecdotes. I reconnected with Nick when he moved to Lismore, and of course came to know the wonderful Natalie, who became Natsky. I laughed so much when Nick invited me to come to his home for a listen. Where else would he live but Music Street? That house became known to me and our dearest friend Chris Demas as the BAROVSKY Hilton. We spent many delightful days together listening to music, endlessly discussing hi-fi and being woken by Nick with one of his patented coffees. Nat often played DJ, regaling us with her own blend of music. Halcyon days, never to be forgotten. It was Nick who introduced me to Lismore and the Northern Rivers, another of his passions. It became an annual event to bring my children to Lismore and stay with Nick and Nat. All became firm friends, and we always visited whenever we were in Australia. I was back in 2019 with my daughter Isabel, and of course we came up to Lismore. We were greeted by Nick in his traditional manner with a huge hug. Never did we imagine it would be the last time that we would see him. And so we mourn the passing of this extraordinary man. We remember him and all the ways he brought joy, laughter and music and hi-fi into our lives. John, Evelyn, Isabel and James Hall. All right, now on to the big one. Natalie BAROVSKY has given me an encyclopedia on Nick BAROVSKY. It's been a real insight to me, as Nick usually spent his time in the shop. I'm not going to repeat them here, but he would tell me the filthiest, dirtiest jokes at times, but hilariously funny. Some of them where people just go, Jimmy, where did you learn a joke like that? I go, Nick BAROVSKY. So this is what he told me about. I'd actually love to tell one of the jokes, but I think it's not the right place here. I should wait until the bowling club to tell the biggest classic of all. It's a very hillbilly sort of country joke, so he thought I'd appreciate it. Anyway, I better get into this. Nicholas Constantine BAROVSKY. Another thing, I didn't know his middle name was Constantine, named after the Christian emperor. Nick, born in 7th of the 2nd, 1946, and known to us all as Nick. The life of Nick BAROVSKY is hard to condense to just a few paragraphs. He experienced a life filled with great adventures and many achievements. But most importantly for him, it was all about the people. The gathering of friends here today is a visible sign of just how many people felt love and affection for this man. So I will begin with some history about where it all started and some details that many will not know. Nick was born on the 7th of February 1946 in Kowloon Hospital in Hong Kong. He lived on a dairy farm in Pok Fu Lam with his Portuguese mother Thelma, Russian father Constantine, and Russian grandmother Maria. And when he was 5, his little sister Jenny came along. He grew up speaking English, Russian, and Cantonese fluently, swapping between languages, which was dependent on who he was addressing. He had Cossack blood running through his veins, and culturally, he may as well have been Chinese. Apparently, he was pretty shy as a kid, though you wouldn't know it talking to him as an adult. He definitely grew up to be a very interesting human. He would tell stories of going shopping at the food markets in his pre-teen years because his mother didn't trust the maids not to steal the shopping money. They would go buy chickens and fish live because that was as fresh as you could get. Daily shopping became a lifelong habit, and no doubt many of you have experienced a mid-aisle chat in Woolies. He would often choose to eat with the maids' family as their Cantonese food was more interesting than the heavy Russian food his mother and grandmother would often make. This is where he credits learning how to cook Cantonese food. I also think this is where his love of food began. Anyone who has experienced one of his dumpling nights or a Chinese feast will understand why one of his nicknames was the Feeder. School days were spent at the international school King George V, or KG5 for short, and some of his schoolmates are with us here today. There are also numerous schoolmates watching this live stream from around the globe. The fact that these friendships still exist 7 decades later is testament to the strong bonds formed so many years ago. Nick was the typical sporty teenager, playing cricket, soccer and squash. He was also the typical teenage boy with lots of girlfriends. His first love was Rosie, and she's here today. Nick was part of a gang of 4 that you didn't mess with. Sid, Norman, Pete and Nick. They were called the 4 Gigolos. They were the epitome of cool and ruled the school. And though they were somewhat feared, it was for all the right reasons. If you were being bullied, you would talk to his gang and they'd sort out the bullies for you. Thankfully, Nick learned to resolve problems with wisdom and words rather than fists in his later years. Around this time, he also learnt Kung Fu. Oh, Laurie told me how to pronounce this. Wing Chun, studying at the same dojo as Bruce Lee. They were not friends. In Nick's words, the little dragon was a little arsehole. These martial arts skills became ingrained and proved useful over the years, either as a practical skill to get you out of scraps, and then when he started working in the movie industry. Yep, most of you would be unaware, but he was in a few movies and commercials. Due to his language skills, he also became the go-to for American film companies making movies in Hong Kong. If you wanted to organise blowing up a Chinese junk in the middle of Hong Kong Harbour, Nick was your man. After finishing school, he studied electronics and eventually worked for Lockheed Martin Aircraft in the late 60s. He was building on a large scale, wait for it, computer motherboards. He was in middle management by 1967 and was given a choice to start a new branch in Canada, USA, or Australia. He almost went to Canada, but decided that all the people he really enjoyed hanging out with were crazy Aussies. So off to Australia he went. At the time, he had just started dating a woman named BJ. He told her he was headed to Australia and she thought it sounded like fun and wanted to come too. Nick said sure. When they went to book their tickets on the boat to Oz, they were told they couldn't share a cabin unless they were married. Not wanting to waste money on 2 tickets, they decided to get married. Nick and BJ had Hong Kong's first mod wedding and made all the newspapers as young mods blazing a trail, with Nick dressed like a dandy and BJ in a pants jumpsuit. It caused a big stir, and then off they went to Australia. They arrived in Brisbane on April 1st. Nick looked out the window and saw houses on stilts. He decided the captain was playing an April Fool's Day joke on the passengers and that they must be in Papua New Guinea. But then it was confirmed, nope, definitely in Brisbane. His next surprise was when they came into dock and there was a white man wearing shorts, singlet, thongs, with a tan, pulling the mooring ropes. Not so strange, other than it was the first time English colony-born Nick had seen a white man doing manual labour. His perception of his world was about to shift. Over time, he started to recognise and then question the oppression and class system he'd come from. He ditched the idea of having mates and treated each person as an equal. Even late into life, he would always sit in the front seat of a cab and have a chat with the driver, just so he wasn't being chauffeur-driven. On a trip on the Manly Ferry, Nick decided that he liked this side of town and not long after moved to Freshwater against all of his parents' recommendations to move to Strathfield with the rest of the Russians. His first neighbour was Jackie Weaver. They became friends and she got him work in Oz, in the movies. He met a lot of Aussie actors over the years and became close friends with Alistair Smart and Benita Collins from Play School. Some of those stories are not G-rated. He also met a beautiful young woman named Yvonne and was immediately smitten. They became inseparable and eventually married and created a home and a life together. They made one hot-looking couple enjoying a rather hedonistic life, living large in the 70s. Nick continued working in electronics and also started a side hustle in his mid-20s fixing loudspeakers. He would also regularly find himself helping friends buy hi-fi systems. You see, Nick's passion for sound goes way back to when at age 9, he inherited his father's old Garrard turntable and a quad amplifier, but he needed loudspeakers. Nick's solution was to cut a hole in his wardrobe and mount a 9-inch mono-speaker driver in it, a big box with lots of clothes for damping. Genius. His mother never forgave him for vandalising the wardrobe, but it was the beginning of a lifelong quest for knowledge around hi-fi and sound. Eventually, more and more friends, then friends of friends, started asking for advice around hi-fi, and he was good at it. More importantly, he loved it. Nick found so much joy in opening people's worlds with good sound and fabulous music. He got off on it. Somebody planted a seed that he could do this for a living, and not long after, Riverina Hi-Fi in Brookvale, Sydney became a reality. He steadily built a loyal customer base and made a reputation for himself within the industry as someone who knew their stuff and was passionate about sound. Some things never change. Over the years, he became friends with the founders of some of the biggest hi-fi companies in the world. Julian Verica of Mame Audio, Ivar Typhon-Brunn of Lynn Sound Deck, and Roy Gandy of Riga Turntable fame, to name just a few. He became a destination if you were serious about sound, and his encyclopedic knowledge of gear was extraordinary. People would come into the shop and challenge him with a, "You won't know about loudspeaker such and such," and then he would proceed to school the customer on where they were made, the fact that the warehouse burnt down in such and such a year, and now the only person who has replacement drivers works out of his garage in Manchester. He picked up many jaws from the floor. Nick traded out of the Brookvale shop on Sydney's northern beaches until the late 80s. By that stage, digital had arrived and people were dumping turntables in their vinyl collections, replacing them with CDs. Nick hated the digital sound and his ears couldn't believe the lie that was being sold. His conscience wouldn't let him sell to his customers either. So in 1987, he upped stumps and moved to the North Coast with Yvonne. They bought a place in Broken Head and Nick started studying horticulture, conventional and organic. He also joined the Rural Fire Brigade and with a lot of work helped them to become one of the crack teams in this region. When Byron started getting busy and all the hippies started moving out, Nick did the same. They bought a farm in Lindendale and started growing organic custard apples for export. Nick was a farmer. So for a few years he rode his John Deere and enjoyed country life, but with more and more regularity, people from his old life were tracking him down for hi-fi advice. Eventually he decided his knowledge was needed again and he started working with another Nick Udovic, in a shop out of Magellan Street in Lismore. They worked together for a few years before Nick Udovic decided to get out of the hi-fi game, and our Nick took over the business. Nick's wife, Yvonne, had become quite ill by this stage, so they moved to Music Street in East Lismore to be closer to doctors and the hospital. He continued to look after her while working full-time. It was bloody hard, but we're talking about Nick. Loyal, and devoted to the 9th degree. There was a flood in early 2001 which filled the shop, and this instigated the move to the shop on the corners of Magellan and Carrington Street, where many of us have spent hours over the years listening, talking and sharing all things analogue and music. We used to call it Groovy Corner. He also took on a new offsider at this time, somebody he knew from Sydney days, Natsky. The two of them ran the shop and looked after Yvonne side by side until she sadly passed away. Nick was heartbroken, but with time his heart healed, and not long after, the close relationship between Nick and Natsky turned into romance, and they married at the end of 2003. Over the next 21 years, the business grew, and some say Nick single-handedly started the resurgence of vinyl. His extensive knowledge was tapped into by young and old, no matter where they were on their musical journey. Seeing people's faces light up gave him the purest joy. Nick and Nat were regulars at live music gigs, and Nick became a big supporter of many of the North Coast musos and artists. Now it gets on to me, including myself. I'm not going to read this, I'll just say this bit. Nick said to me, after organising a thing called Dressing the Windows to fill Lismore's windows with art to make the streets into a gallery, Nick said, yep, I'm into this as long as I can have Jimmy Willing in the window. And then after everything was packed down, he said to me, look, Jimmy, you can have the window. It's your window. And so he became my patron, and it was absolutely wonderful because the window was central. I'm sorry if there's people from the gallery here today, but that window was seen by more people than if you were hung in the regional gallery. So that it actually gave me a platform. In these days where people say there is no platform, well, Nick's window gave me a platform, especially to promote gigs. But then he'd pull me aside and say, Jimmy, don't just promote the gigs and the musicians, stick your art in there and make yourself some money, mate. You need to eat, you know. So he was an absolutely wonderful patron to myself and many other artists who I put in the window. Thank you, Nick. Okay, back to this. Okay, he had hundreds of CDs that he'd purchased at local gigs that he couldn't play because he didn't own a CD player, but he bought them anyway just to support the music. He did a stint for a few years on ABC radio talking about music, and we're still not sure whether the success of the show was based on his fabulous deep radio voice or in the interesting bits he knew about the featured musos. People loved it. These were some of the happiest years of his life. Nick and Nat also travelled a lot, with a highlight being to Las Vegas in 2015, where he was reunited with many of his KG5 schoolmates. This led to further trips and many phone conversations as his old friendships were rekindled all around the world, right where they'd left off. This gave him so much happiness. In early 2020, Nick and Natsky separated, but remained great friends. But being alone again was tough for Nick. He found great comfort with these old friends, spending time with them, reminiscing about shenanigans in Causeway Bay and Repulse Bay. He treasured these friendships. From May 2016, Nick had a new offsider in the shop, Phil Reed. Phil brought a whole new dimension of knowledge and energy to the shop, with a background as a sound engineer and also knowledge of the digital world. We must note that Nick was still a Luddite, allergic to anything digital, and only started using a mobile phone and email 2 years ago because he had to. With Phil there, they were able to grow what they could offer in the shop, and it was Nick's wish that eventually he would retire, or at least work less, and hand over the reins to Phil. In February 2022, the flood happened. It has been devastating for this community, but a community it is, and even though the shop was decimated and Nick's house also flooded, people rallied to help a man who'd helped them over the years. Many people were responsible for getting the audio room operating again from the James Street address, and Nick and Phil were overwhelmed with support from not just family and friends, but customers old and new. The gratitude he felt for these people was deep. It's been huge. It was Nick's wish that the support continue as Phil takes the audio room forward and continues Nick's legacy. So please support Phil and make Nick's wish come true. He was a Lismore legend. Working from Magellan Street, Nick became very much a part of the local community, and he was always ready for a chat or to lend a hand where needed. Nick supported countless causes over the years, sponsored kids, artists and musicians, and gave many people advice, whether starting a new business, trying to get their life on track, or just how to get a better sound. He was funny, kind, wise, gentle, cultured, proud, generous, stubborn, and an English gentleman to the end. He was a friend to any child or animal, and they would magically gravitate towards him in any situation. The eternal foodie, he was a fan of first growth red wines, vodka, single malt whiskey, dumplings, sashimi, roast pork belly, and cooking for friends. He was so much to so many. It is why we are all here today, because Nick was loved. It is why we are all feeling his loss so deeply, because he was loved. For many, his passing has come as a shock, as very few people knew of his illness. This was the way Nick wanted it. He had a very close and small circle of people in the background helping him with cancer treatment, doctor's appointments, and whatever he needed to continue to live as normally as possible. It gave him the opportunity to spend whatever time he had left enjoying the people around him, continuing to live large without the undertone of his illness. Without the undertone of his illness being ever present. And for 18 months, he enjoyed his days and made the most of them, and then went out on his own terms. He would not want us to be anything but happy for a life well lived, to celebrate his achievements, to share stories, to be together and toast him. Remember him with an open heart, full of love and happiness. Remember him through the music he shared, the stories he told, and the laughs you shared. It is what he wanted, and he thanks you all for sharing it with him. R.I.P. Nick. You were a living legend, and we all love you, and will miss you terribly. Go well, and we'll see you on the dark side of the moon. Well, Nick BAROVSKY.
Thank you, Jimmy. That was really well read, and thank you. It was a beautiful eulogy. We are now going to have a time for reflection, because each one here has known something of the love and the life Nick has shared, and you will each have your own personal and unique memory of him. I invite you to bring, if you can, just a particular memory to mind, a moment shared, a story told, or something that was unique to Nick's personality, and let you each make your own personal thanksgivings for all that Nick has gifted to you through his living. This is also the time to start saying your final farewells, and we will do this to Pink Floyd, Wish You Were Here.
So you think you can tell heaven from hell, blue skies from pain? Can you tell a green field from a cold steel rail, a smile from a veil? Do you think you can tell? Did they get you to train
has, as we've heard, helped a lot of people over the years. And these words by Felicity Hertzlet might offer you some comfort at this time. Do not dwell on him going, but remember always the love for him that is within you and will go on and on. So many are bound to him through actions small or efforts large, through sharing lives or but fleeting moments. It is love that lives on, love which sustains and dulls the pain of earthly parting. The earthly life of Nick BAROVSKY has come to a close. The measure of Nick is not determined by his show of outward strength, or the volume of his voice, or the thunder of his actions, or of his intellect or academic abilities. It is seen rather in the terms of the love he had for his family and friends, the strength of his commitments, the genuineness of his friendships, the sincerity of his purpose, the quiet courage of his convictions, the fun, laughter, joy, and happiness he gave, and his love of life. We do give thanks for a life richly shared. We give thanks for Nick, the years we have shared with him, the good we have seen in him, and the love we have received from him. He continues to live in the fondness of our memories and in the tenderness of our hearts. Would you please stand? With deep sadness at our loss, but with thanks for a life richly shared, as your season on this earth has come to a close, we now commit your body, Nick, to the good earth. We complete this, our farewell today, by scattering petals onto Nick's coffin. This is an opportunity for you to commune your words of farewell to Nick, offering him the farewell you wanted to say, or anything else that you need to offer. Nick missed out on his birthday party earlier this month because he was in hospital. So the upcoming wake at 2 p.m. at the Lismore Bowling Club in Molesworth Street is an opportunity to celebrate Nick in all his beautiful glory. Please, will you join us there? Mimi will now come forward with the petals, and you can linger with your final farewell as we have a number of Nick's favourite songs to see us through the petal ceremony and leaving this graveside today. Go well, with happiness and gratitude for having known a great man.
When the night has come and the land is dark and the moon is the only light we'll see. No, I won't be afraid. Oh, I won't be afraid. Just as long as you stand by me. So darling, darling, stand by me. Oh, stand by me. Oh, stand by me, stand by me. If the sky that we look upon should tumble and fall, the mountain should crumble to the sea. I won't cry, no I won't shed a tear, just as long as you stand by me. And darling, stand by me. Oh, stand by me. Oh, stand now. Stand by me. Stand by me. Stand by me, stand by me. Whenever you're in trouble, won't you stand by me? Oh, stand by me. Whoa, stand now. Oh, stand. We were born before the wind, also younger than the sun. And the bonnie boat was one as we sail into the mystic. Oh, I can now hear the sailors cry, smell the sea and feel the sky. Let your soul and spirit fly into the mystic. And where that foghorn blows, I will be coming home. Yeah, when the foghorn blows, I wanna hear it. I don't have to fear it, and I wanna rock your gypsy soul, just like way back in the days of old. And magnificently we will fold into the mystic. That foghorn, you know I will be coming home. Yeah, when that foghorn whistle blows, I gotta hear it. I don't have to fear it, and I rock your gypsy soul, just like way back in the days of old. Together we will float into the mystic. Come on, girl. whole life I did spend, be it mine right or wrongfully. I let it slip gladly to my friends, to tie up the time most forcefully. But the bottles are done, we've killed each one, and the table's full and overflowed. And the corner sign says it's closing time, so I'll bid farewell and bid down the road. Oh, every girl that ever I've touched, I did not do it harmfully. And every girl that ever I've hurt, I did not do it knowingly. But to remain as friends, you need the time to make amends and stay behind. And since my feet are now fast and point away from the past, I'll bid farewell and bid down the line. Oh, every foe that ever I faced, the cause was there before we came. And every cause that ever I fought it full without regret or shame. But the dark does die as the curtain is drawn, and somebody's eyes must meet the dawn. And if I see the day, I'd only have to stay. So I'll bid farewell in the night and be gone. Oh, every thought that strung a knot in my mind, I might go insane if it couldn't be sprung. But it's not to stand naked under unknowing eyes. It's for myself and my friends, my stories are sung. But the time ain't tall if on time you depend, and no word is possessed by no special friend. And though the line is cut, it ain't quite the end. I just bid farewell till we meet again. Oh, a false clock tries to tick out my time, to disgrace, distract, and bother me. And the dirt of gossip blows into my face, and the dust of rumors covers me. But if the arrow is straight and the point is slick, it can pierce through dust no matter how thick. So I'll make my stand and remain as I am, and bid farewell and not give a damn.
Another turning point, a fork stuck in the road. Time grabs you by the wrist, directs you where to go. So make the best of this test and don't ask why. It's not a question, but a lesson learned in time. It's something unpredictable, but in the end is right. I hope you had the time of your life. So take the photographs and still frames in your mind, hanging on a shelf in good health and good time. Tattoos and memories and dead skin on trial. For what it's worth, it was worth all the while. It's something unpredictable, but in the end is right. I hope you had the time of your life. But in the end it's right. I hope you had the time of your life. It's something unpredictable, but in the end is right. I hope you had the time of your life.